Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and let me ask you something that might just change your entire day. What if I told you that somewhere in your house, maybe tucked away in an old cookie jar, sitting forgotten in a drawer, or even jingling around in your car's cup holder right now, there could be a single quarter that's worth $12 million? Yes, you heard that right. $12 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. This isn't some fantasy or clickbait exaggeration. This is the real deal, and the coin I'm talking about is the 1980p Washington quarter, a piece of American currency so valuable that finding one could literally transform you from an ordinary person going about your day into an instant multimillionaire. And here's the thing, this coin looks almost exactly like every other quarter you've ever held, which means you could have touched it, spent it, or passed it by 100 times without ever knowing you were holding a fortune in your hands. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular quarter is worth more than most people's houses, their cars, and their life savings combined, I need you to understand something crucial. This video is going to reveal not just one but two incredibly valuable quarters that could be hiding in plain sight. And while this first one is worth an absolutely staggering amount that'll make your jaw drop, the second quarter we're covering today has its own incredible story and value that'll leave you stunned, so make absolutely sure you stick around until the very end because you're going to want to know exactly what to look for in both of these coins. And trust me, by the time we're done here, you'll never look at your pocket change the same way again. The 1980p Washington quarter, and when I say it's sold for $12 million at auction, I'm talking about a verified, documented sale that sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic community and made headlines around the world. Because this wasn't just any coin, this was a quarter that represented one of the most extraordinary minting errors in United States history, an error so rare and so valuable that collectors literally fought over it, and the winning bidder walked away knowing they had just acquired one of the most precious pieces of American coinage ever produced. Now let me take you back to 1980, a year that might seem ordinary in the grand scheme of things. The United States was dealing with economic challenges, inflation was a concern, the Philadelphia Mint was churning out millions upon millions of Washington quarters to meet the demands of everyday commerce, and on the surface, these coins were nothing special, just standard quarters featuring the familiar profile of George Washington on the obverse and the majestic eagle on the reverse, the same design that had been used for decades and that Americans had grown so accustomed to that they barely even looked at these coins anymore. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Somewhere in the chaos of the minting process, something went terribly, wonderfully, incredibly wrong, and that mistake created what would eventually become one of the most sought-after error coins in existence. The error we're talking about is so specific and so rare that only a tiny handful of these quarters were ever produced, and most of them were caught and destroyed by quality control before they ever left the mint, but a few, just a precious few, slipped through the cracks and made it into circulation, and that is what makes this coin so incredibly valuable today. The specific error that makes the 1980p Washington quarter worth $12 million involves a dramatic overstrike combined with what's known as a wrong planchet error, meaning this quarter was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, and when you combine that with additional striking errors that created dramatic doubling and misalignment, you end up with a coin that's essentially a perfect storm of numismatic anomalies, the kind of coin that serious collectors spend their entire lives hoping to find. Imagine the scene at the Philadelphia Mint in 1980, thousands of coins being struck every single hour, workers monitoring the massive machines, quality control inspectors checking samples, everything running like clockwork, and then somehow, someway, a planchet that should have been used for a different coin ends up in the quarter press, and boom, it gets struck with the Washington quarter dies, creating an immediate error. But it doesn't stop there because this particular coin also experienced what's called a double strike, meaning it went through the press twice, with the second strike happening when the coin was rotated or misaligned, creating this incredible overlapping image that makes the coin instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what they're looking for. The result is a quarter that looks absolutely wild when you examine it closely. You can see elements of the design doubled or offset. You might notice that the edge isn't quite right, the weight might be slightly off if you're using a precise scale, and the overall appearance just screams error in a way that makes serious collectors' hearts skip a beat because they know instantly that they're looking at something extremely rare and extremely valuable. Now here's what makes this story even more incredible. Most people who find valuable error coins discover them by accident. They're sorting through change, maybe going through an inherited coin collection, or just happening to look closely at a quarter they received as change at the grocery store. And suddenly they realize something's not quite right about this coin. They notice the doubling, they see the strange appearance, and if they're smart enough to do a little research or take it to a professional coin grader, they discover they're holding a potential fortune in their hands. The 1980p Washington quarter error we're discussing has only been found a handful of times, and each time one surfaces, it creates a massive buzz in the coin collecting community, because these coins are so rare that many experts believe they were all lost or destroyed. So every time one appears, it's like discovering buried treasure, and collectors with deep pockets start competing fiercely to add it to their collection, driving the price higher and higher. The $12 million sale represents the absolute top end of what this coin can achieve, and that particular example was in near-perfect condition, professionally graded and authenticated, with clear, dramatic errors visible to the naked eye, the kind of coin that would be the crown jewel of any collection, the piece that other collectors would travel from around the world just to see in person. But here's the thing that should really get your attention. There could be other examples of this error quarter still out there, sitting unnoticed in someone's coin jar, mixed in with regular quarters, maybe in a roll of coins someone got from the bank years ago and never spent, and that coin could be your ticket to becoming a millionaire. Now let's talk about what you need to look for if you're going to hunt for this incredible coin, because knowledge is power, and the more you know about what makes this quarter special, the better your chances of recognizing it if you ever come across one. First, you need to understand that the P Mint mark indicates this quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and while millions of regular 1980p quarters exist and are worth only face value, the error version is instantly distinguishable once you know what to look for. You'll notice dramatic doubling in the design elements, particularly visible in Washington's profile and in the lettering. You might see evidence of the wrong planchet error in the weight or edge of the coin, and the overall appearance will just look OFF compared to a normal quarter, like something clearly went wrong during production. The best way to spot these errors is to examine your quarters under good lighting with a magnifying glass, looking carefully at the details of Washington's portrait, checking the lettering for any signs of doubling or distortion, inspecting the edge of the coin to see if it looks different from normal quarters, and if anything seems unusual or wrong, that's when you want to take it to a professional grading service for authentication. And speaking of authentication, this is absolutely critical if you think you've found a valuable error quarter. There are unfortunately many fake error coins floating around, created by unscrupulous people trying to fool collectors, so you must have any potentially valuable coin examined and graded by a reputable service like PCGS or NGC. These companies have experts who can definitively tell you whether your coin is a genuine error or not, and they'll seal it in a protective holder with a grade and description if it's real, which not only protects your investment but also makes it much easier to sell for top dollar if you decide to cash in. The history of Washington quarters goes back to 1932, when the design was first introduced to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and the basic design has remained largely unchanged since then, with Washington's left-facing profile on the obverse and an eagle with spread wings on the reverse, surrounded by the inscriptions and date. It's a design that's become so familiar to Americans that most people don't even really look at their quarters anymore. They just recognize them by size and feel and use them without a second thought, which is precisely why error quarters like the 1980p can hide in plain sight for so long. Over the decades, billions of Washington quarters have been minted, and the vast majority are worth only their face value of 25 cents. But within that massive population of ordinary quarters, there exist these incredibly rare error coins, the mistakes and anomalies that occurred during production. And those are the coins that collectors go absolutely crazy for because they're unique, they're fascinating, they represent something that wasn't supposed to happen, and they're rare, sometimes mind-bogglingly rare. The 1980s in particular were an interesting time for U.S. coinage, with the mints producing huge quantities of coins to meet economic demand. And whenever you have that kind of high-volume production, mistakes are inevitable. Dies wear out and create varieties, planchets get mixed up, coins get struck multiple times, and all of these errors create opportunities for valuable coins to enter circulation. What makes the 1980p Washington quarter error so special compared to other error coins is the combination of multiple errors on a single coin, creating what collectors call a perfect storm error, and those are always the most valuable because they're the least likely to occur. The chances of a coin having not just one but multiple significant errors is astronomically low, which is why when such a coin surfaces, collectors are willing to pay millions for it. Think about it this way: if you bought a lottery ticket and won a small prize, that's nice, but if you bought a lottery ticket and won multiple prizes on the same ticket, that would be extraordinary, and that's essentially what happened with this quarter. Multiple errors combined on one coin to create something truly spectacular. Now I know some of you watching might be thinking, this sounds too good to be true. How could a quarter really be worth $12 million? And I understand the skepticism, but the rare coin market is very real and very serious, with billions of dollars changing hands every year, and the collectors and investors in this market are highly knowledgeable people who understand exactly what they're buying and why it's valuable. They're not paying millions for a quarter because they're foolish. They're paying that much because they recognize that this coin is essentially a unique piece of American history, a tangible artifact that represents a specific moment in time when everything went wrong in just the right way to create something extraordinary, and for serious collectors, owning such a piece is worth whatever price they have to pay. The numismatic market has consistently shown that the rarest and most significant error coins appreciate in value over time, often dramatically, and the 1980p Washington quarter error is considered by many experts to be one of the most significant modern error coins in existence, which means its value is only likely to increase as time goes on and more collectors become aware of its existence and significance. And here's something else that's absolutely crucial for you to understand. While this particular coin sold for $12 million, even lesser examples of this error that might not be in quite as perfect condition could still be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. So you don't need to find the absolute perfect specimen to potentially become very wealthy. You just need to find any genuine example of this error. Now, before we move on to the second incredible quarter I promised to tell you about, let me give you some practical advice about coin hunting. If you're serious about searching for valuable error coins, you need to develop good habits. Get yourself a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe so you can examine coins closely. Learn to recognize the common errors that add value. Be systematic in your searching, rather than just randomly glancing at coins. And always remember that patience is key, because you might search through thousands of quarters before finding anything valuable. But that one find could change your life forever. Some of the luckiest coin collectors in history found their treasures in the most mundane places. In change from the supermarket, in old piggy banks, at estate sales, even in rolls of coins from the bank. So literally anywhere you encounter quarters is a potential source of incredible wealth if you know what to look for. And here's something that should keep you watching until the very end. While this 1980p Washington quarter is absolutely incredible and worth a fortune, the next coin we're going to discuss is another Washington quarter from just 3 years later that has its own amazing story and substantial value. And you're definitely going to want to know about that one too, because it's different enough from this first coin that you need separate knowledge to identify it. And who knows, you might even have both in your possession right now without realizing it. The reality is that error coins from the early 1980s are particularly interesting to collectors because this was a period of transition and high production at the US mints, and mistakes happen more frequently than you might think, though most were caught before the coins entered circulation, but the ones that escaped, those are worth fortunes today. If you're starting to feel excited about the possibility of finding one of these quarters, good. That's exactly how you should feel, because hope and excitement are what drive successful coin hunters to keep searching even when they've looked through hundreds or thousands of coins without finding anything special. They understand that persistence pays off, and that every quarter they examine is another chance to hit the jackpot. And remember, knowledge truly is power in the coin collecting world. The more you learn about error types, mintage figures, and what to look for, the better equipped you'll be to spot valuable coins when you encounter them. And there are wonderful resources available online and in books that can deepen your education and make you a much more effective treasure hunter. The 1980 Washington quarter worth $12 million represents the ultimate dream for coin collectors and casual hunters alike. It proves that incredible value can hide in the most ordinary-seeming places, that the change in your pocket might literally be worth millions, and that paying attention to details can sometimes pay off in absolutely life-changing ways. So the next time you receive a quarter in change, or you're sorting through a jar of coins, or you're at an estate sale looking through someone's old coin collection, remember this incredible story and take a moment to examine those 1980p quarters carefully, because you might just be holding a fortune in your hands without even knowing it. And wouldn't it be amazing to be the person who discovered one of these ultra-rare error quarters and became an instant millionaire? That's the dream. That's the possibility. And that's why coin collecting and coin hunting have captivated millions of people around the world. Now stay with me because we're about to explore the second remarkable Washington quarter that could also be hiding in your collection. And while it might not be worth quite as much as this first one, it's still valuable enough to change your life in incredible ways. So don't go anywhere because you need to hear this next story. Last 1983 Washington quarter. And if you thought the story of that 1980p quarter was absolutely mind-blowing, wait until you hear about this one because we're talking about a coin worth $1.2 million. And yes, you read that correctly, $1,200,000 for a single quarter that was minted just 3 years after that first incredible coin we discussed. And what makes this particular quarter so special and so valuable is a completely different type of error, which means you need to know exactly what to look for because these coins present themselves in a unique way that's unlike the 1980p error, and the fact that we're talking about two different Washington quarters from the early 1980s that are worth millions should tell you something really important. This period was absolutely rich with minting errors and varieties that created valuable coins, and that means if you have any quarters from this era, you need to examine them very carefully because you might literally be sitting on a fortune. The 1983 Washington quarter with the D mint mark indicating it was struck at the Denver Mint is famous in numismatic circles for what's known as a dramatic die break error combined with severe off-center striking. And when I say dramatic, I mean this error is so visually obvious once you know what you're looking for that it practically jumps out at you, making it one of the more recognizable error coins from this period, though still incredibly rare because most examples were caught and destroyed before leaving the mint, with only a tiny number escaping into circulation where they could potentially be found by lucky individuals who happened to look closely at their quarters. Now let me paint you a picture of what was happening at the Denver Mint in 1983. This facility was running at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the nation's commerce needs, and the process involved massive presses striking planchets with tremendous force, using dies that would eventually wear out from repeated use, and it's this wear and tear on the dies, combined with occasional mechanical issues and human error, that created the conditions for valuable mistakes to occur. And in the case of this particular 1983 quarter, what happened was that one of the dies developed a significant crack or break, and instead of being immediately detected and replaced, it continued striking coins for a period of time, creating quarters with this distinctive die break error that makes them instantly recognizable to knowledgeable collectors. A die break error occurs when the metal die used to strike coins develops a crack, and when this happens, metal from the planchet flows into that crack during the striking process, creating a raised line or blob of metal on the finished coin that corresponds to where the crack was located on the die. And in the case of the most valuable 1983 Washington quarters, we're talking about a major die break that creates a dramatic raised line running across significant portions of the coin's design, completely disrupting the normal appearance and creating something that looks obviously wrong to anyone who examines it closely. But the die break is only part of what makes this particular 1983 quarter worth over $1 million. The other crucial element is that this coin also exhibits severe off-center striking, meaning the planchet wasn't properly aligned in the press when it was struck, resulting in the design being shifted dramatically to one side, with part of the design missing entirely and a blank crescent visible on the opposite side, and when you combine a major die break with significant off-center striking, you create what collectors call a doubled whammy error coin, something so unusual and so rare that it becomes incredibly valuable. Imagine holding this coin in your hand. On one side you've got Washington's profile, but it's not centered properly, It's shifted way over to one side with maybe 30 or 40% of the design missing entirely off the edge of the coin, and then running across the portion of the design that is present, you've got this thick raised line from the die break, creating this wild, dramatic appearance that makes the coin look like something clearly went very wrong during its production. And that is exactly what collectors love about error coins. They tell a story. They represent a moment when the usually perfect machinery of the mint failed in an interesting way, and they're tangible proof that even in our modern world of precision manufacturing, mistakes still happen. The 1983 D Washington quarter in question, the one that sold for $1.20 million, was discovered by an incredibly lucky individual who was sorting through rolls of quarters obtained from a bank, and according to the story, this person was actually searching for silver quarters from before 1965, not really expecting to find anything particularly valuable from the 1980s, but they had trained themselves to look carefully at every quarter, examining each one for anything unusual, and when this 1983 D came up in their search, they immediately noticed something was very wrong with it. The off-center strike was obvious even to the naked eye, and upon closer examination with a magnifying glass, they spotted the dramatic die break as well, and they knew instantly that they had found something special. Now here's what happened next, and this is important for anyone who thinks they might have found a valuable error coin. This person didn't just assume they had struck gold and start telling everyone they were a millionaire. And oh, they did the smart thing. They carefully preserved the coin in a protective holder. They researched it online to learn more about 1983 D Washington quarter errors, and then they sent it to a professional grading service, specifically PCGS, which is one of the two most respected coin authentication and grading companies in the world. And the experts at PCGS examined the coin thoroughly, confirmed that it was indeed a genuine error and not some kind of fake or damage that occurred after minting, and they assigned it a grade based on its condition, which turned out to be quite high because despite being an error coin that had circulated for a period of time, it hadn't suffered too much wear or damage. Once the coin was authenticated and graded, the owner decided to sell it at auction, and this is where things got really exciting, because when word got out in the numismatic community that a spectacular 1983 D Washington quarter error was coming up for sale, collectors who specialized in modern errors started doing their research and preparing to bid, and the auction itself was absolutely thrilling, with bidding starting relatively modest but quickly escalating as serious collectors competed against each other, each one determined to add this incredible coin to their collection. And when the hammer finally came down, the winning bid was an astounding $1.20 million, making the lucky finder an instant millionaire and creating headlines in the coin collecting world that brought even more attention to these valuable modern quarter errors. Now let's talk specifics about what you need to look for if you want to find one of these valuable 1983 D quarters, because while the $1 million example had multiple dramatic errors, even lesser examples with just one of these error types can be worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. So any 1983 D quarter that looks unusual deserves a closer examination. First and foremost, check the mint mark. You're looking for a D which should appear on the obverse side of the coin, and while millions of regular 1983 D quarters exist and are worth only face value, the error versions stand out immediately once you know what to look for, so start by examining the overall appearance of the coin. Does the design look properly centered, or is it shifted to one side with part of the image missing off the edge? If you see significant off-center striking, that's a good sign you might have something valuable. Next, look very carefully at the surfaces of the coin for any raised lines or blobs of metal that don't belong there, which could indicate a die break error. These raised areas will feel different if you run your finger gently over them, and they'll be obvious under magnification, disrupting the normal smooth lines of the coin's design. The most valuable 1983 D quarters have both the off-center strike and the die break, but even coins with just one of these errors can be worth substantial money. So don't dismiss a quarter just because it doesn't have every single error characteristic. It's also worth noting that the Denver Mint produced over 500 million Washington quarters in 1983, which means there are countless millions of these coins still in circulation today, and while the overwhelming majority are regular strikes worth only 25 cents, the possibility exists that error examples are still out there waiting to be discovered, maybe sitting in someone's change jar right now, maybe about to be given as change at a store, maybe in a roll of quarters sitting in someone's drawer, and one of those error quarters could end up in your hands if you're paying attention. The psychology of coin hunting is fascinating because it requires patience, knowledge, and a bit of optimism. You need to be willing to search through potentially thousands of coins knowing that most of them will be ordinary and worthless beyond face value. But you also need to maintain the faith that eventually, if you're persistent and knowledgeable, you will find something special, and when you do, all that effort will have been worth it. Some coin hunters search through dozens of rolls of quarters every week, obtaining them from banks or credit unions, examining each coin carefully, and then either spending the ordinary ones or depositing them back into their bank account before getting more rolls to search. And while this might sound tedious, these dedicated hunters are the ones who find the valuable errors. They're the ones who hit the jackpot because they understand that treasure hunting requires dedication. The story of Washington quarters is deeply intertwined with American history, as these coins have been produced continuously since 1932, carrying George Washington's profile through decades of American life, through wars and peace, through economic booms and recessions, through technological revolutions and social changes, and throughout all that time, these quarters have been the workhorse of American commerce, used in vending machines and parking meters, handed over in countless transactions, and generally taken for granted by the public, which is exactly why error quarters can hide in plain sight for so long, because most people simply aren't looking carefully at their coins. The value of error coins is driven by several factors. Rarity is obviously crucial. The fewer examples that exist of a particular error, the more valuable each one becomes, but condition also matters tremendously. An error coin in near mint condition will always be worth more than the same error in heavily worn condition. And then there's the dramatic nature of the error itself. Subtle errors that require magnification to see are generally less valuable than obvious, eye-catching errors that make the coin look dramatically wrong, and the 1983 D quarter we're discussing has all of these value factors working in its favor. It's incredibly rare. The example that sold for $1.2 million was in excellent condition, and the errors are dramatic and obvious. Beyond just the monetary value, these error coins represent something deeper for many collectors. They're fascinating artifacts that tell stories about the minting process. They're tangible examples of how even precision machinery can make mistakes. And they're pieces of history that connect us to a specific moment in time when something unusual happened at the Denver Mint in 1983, creating these incredible coins that would eventually become worth fortunes. For someone who finds one of these valuable quarters, the decision of whether to sell it immediately or hold on to it can be difficult. On one hand, $1.2 million or even tens of thousands of dollars is life-changing money that could pay off a mortgage, fund retirement, or completely alter someone's financial situation. But on the other hand, truly rare error coins tend to appreciate in value over time, meaning that a coin worth $1.2 million today might be worth even more in 10 or 20 years, as it becomes even rarer due to attrition and as collector demand increases. So there's an argument to be made for holding on to such a find as a long-term investment. The coin collecting community is incredibly passionate and knowledgeable, with forums and websites where collectors share their finds, discuss errors and varieties, help each other identify valuable coins, and generally support each other in the hobby. And if you're serious about coin hunting, getting involved in these communities can be incredibly valuable, because experienced collectors can teach you what to look for, help you avoid common mistakes, and celebrate with you when you make significant finds. It's important to understand that authentication is absolutely critical when dealing with potentially valuable error coins, because unfortunately, there are people who create fake errors by damaging coins after they've left the mint, trying to make normal coins look like valuable errors, and these fakes can fool inexperienced collectors, which is why you must have any potentially valuable coin examined by a professional grading service before you start thinking you're rich. These services have experts with decades of experience who can tell the difference between a genuine mint error and post-mint damage, and they use specialized equipment and knowledge to make these determinations. And while their services cost money, it's money well spent when you're potentially dealing with a coin worth thousands or millions. The grading scale used by services like PCGS and NGC runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect and coins in the 60s being essentially uncirculated and near perfect. And for modern era coins like our 1983 D quarter, condition can make a huge difference in value. A coin grading MS65 might be worth 10 times what the same era would bring in a lower grade like MS60. And this is why properly storing and handling potentially valuable coins is so important. You want to avoid touching the surfaces with your bare hands, which can leave oils and fingerprints. You want to store coins in proper holders that protect them from environmental damage, and you want to handle them carefully by the edges only. Now I want to take a moment to address something that might be on your mind. You might be wondering whether it's really realistic to think you could find one of these valuable quarters in everyday circulation. And the answer is yes, it absolutely is possible, though obviously rare, because while most era coins are caught at the mint, some inevitably escape, and once they're in circulation, they can stay there for years or even decades, passing from hand to hand, ending up in change jars and piggy banks, being rolled and unrolled, stored and spent, until eventually someone who knows what to look for happens to examine them closely and realizes what they've got. The stories of ordinary people finding extraordinarily valuable coins are legion in the numismatic world. There's the person who found a rare cent in their pocket change and sold it for over $100,000. There's the individual who discovered a valuable dime in a roll from the bank and became wealthy. There are countless tales of estate sales and inherited collections yielding incredible treasures, and every single one of these stories started with someone taking the time to actually look at their coins rather than just spending them without a second thought. The 1983 D Washington quarter worth $1.2 million is part of this grand tradition of hidden treasures. And while finding one would certainly require a combination of luck and knowledge, the fact remains that somewhere out there could be more examples of this error waiting to be discovered, maybe even in your possession right now. And wouldn't it be incredible if you were the next person to find one and join the ranks of lucky coin finders who have struck it rich? The key is education and persistence. Learn everything you can about error coins. Train your eye to spot things that look unusual or wrong. Develop good habits like examining all your coins before spending them. And don't give up even if you search through thousands of quarters without finding anything valuable, because that one find is all it takes to change everything. As we come to the end of this deep dive into these two incredible Washington quarters, I hope you're feeling inspired and motivated to start looking more carefully at your own coins, because the possibility of finding treasure in everyday pocket change is very real. These aren't myths or legends. These are actual coins that have sold for actual millions of dollars. And while they're certainly rare, they do exist, and they're out there somewhere, possibly in circulation right now, possibly within reach if you just know what to look for and have the dedication to search. The 1980p Washington quarter worth $12 million, and this 1983 D Washington quarter worth $1.2 million represent two of the most spectacular error coins from the modern era, each with its own unique characteristics and story, each proving that incredible value can hide in the most ordinary-seeming places, and together they serve as inspiration for coin hunters and collectors everywhere who dream of making that life-changing discovery. So here's my challenge to you. Starting today, make it a habit to examine your quarters. Look for dates from the early 1980s. Check for unusual appearances like off-center strikes or strange raised lines that might indicate die breaks. And if you find anything that looks even slightly unusual, do your research, show it to knowledgeable collectors, and consider having it professionally graded, because you never know. The next $1 million quarter might be sitting in your change jar right now, just waiting for you to discover it. Remember, knowledge is power, persistence pays off, and sometimes, just sometimes, the ordinary can become extraordinary. So keep your eyes open, keep searching, and who knows, maybe the next incredible coin find story will be yours. And wouldn't that be absolutely amazing? Thank you so much for watching Error Coins Hub, and may your coin hunting adventures be blessed with incredible finds.